I'm going to tell you a folk tale from Russia called A Portrait for the Czar. Long ago, in the city of St. Petersburg, Russia, there lived a master painter. He had been painting for many, many years, and over the years he developed a reputation as one of the greatest painters in all of Russia. But as he got older, he decided he wanted to have an apprentice for two reasons, really. One, he wanted someone young and strong that could lift and carry heavy things in the art studio. But he also wanted someone that had a unique artistic approach to life, someone that was eager to learn, because this master painter had developed some very unique techniques of painting, and he wanted to pass that on and not have it die with him. And so it was that young Mikhail, 16 years old, was chosen to be the master painter's apprentice. And Mikhail was happy to lift and carry heavy things, and he did have an innate artistic talent, and he was eager to learn. And after several years, Mikhail was selling his own paintings that he produced. Now, also at this time in St. Petersburg, Russia, there lived the Czar of Russia in his palace. And this was the meanest, most evil Czar in the history of Russia. He was so mean. He would bring people before him and give them near impossible tasks. And then when they did not succeed, he would have their head chopped off. Well, one day at the art studio where Mikhail lived with the master, they lived in the apartment above the art studio, there was a knock at the door. And Mikhail went to answer the door, and there was a messenger from the Czar. And he read, "The Czar of Russia requests the presence of the master painter who lives at this place tomorrow at noon." And then he handed the paper to Mikhail. And Mikhail was excited. He thought, the Czar's going to commission him to do a portrait of the Czar. That's fantastic. And so he was all excited when he handed his master and mentor the paper. And when the master painter read this summons, he was not happy, because he had heard what happens in the palace of the Czar, and he wanted no part of it, but he had to go. And Mikhail noticed that he did not look happy at all, and Mikhail said, "Let me go with you, I'll give you moral support." "Oh, no," said the master painter. "You are much too young and impulsive. You might say something to get both of our heads chopped off. No, you stay here, I'll go by myself." And so the next morning, the master painter left his art studio and walked towards the center of St. Petersburg where the palace was, and he presented the summons to the guard, and the guard looked at it and said, "Wait here, I'll come get you when he's ready." Well, he waited there a long time. It was well into the afternoon, past the stated noon time for his presence, and the guard came and got him, and he said, "Follow me." And they went to the Czar's chambers, and it was a long, narrow room with guards standing on both sides. And at the end of the room was this very ornate throne, and the Czar was sitting on the throne. And the master painter was led up to within about 10 feet, and then the guards stood back. And the painter knelt to his knees and said, "Your Majesty, I am honored that you have summoned me to come before you. How may I serve you?" And the Czar said, "I have heard some people say that you are the greatest painter in all of Russia. Is that true?" "Well," said the humble painter, "it is true. I have been painting for many, many years. However, I have no idea who is the greatest painter in Russia, because I am a painter, not a painting critic." "Good answer," said the Czar. "Good answer. I think I would like to find out how good you are at painting. I'm going to commission you to do a painting. You choose the subject, but I want this to be the greatest painting you have ever done. And I want this painting to be so awesome that when I look at it, it will take my breath away. Can you do that?" "Yes," said the master painter. "I think I could do that. I will give it my best effort." "Well, you had better," said the Czar, "because if you fail to take my breath away, if you fail to please me with your painting, I will have your head chopped off. Now you have 6 weeks to do this painting. You can do it sooner and bring it to me whenever it's done, but it must be done by 6 weeks. Do you have any other questions?" And the master painter said, "No, Your Majesty, thank you for the honor of doing this." And he turned and he left. Well, on the way back to the art studio, he was fretting. How in the world was he going to do a painting that would please this Czar and take his breath away? So when he got back to the studio, he told Mikhail what his task was. And Mikhail, forever the optimist, said, "Oh, that's easy. You are a wonderful painter of birds of prey. What you should do is paint a beautiful sky, and then on top of that, paint a raptor in full flight coming right off of the canvas. That'll take his breath away." You know what? That's a good idea. I think I will do that. Let's get everything ready, set up the easel, get the paints, and I'll start first thing in the morning. And so he did. And he worked all day long. He painted a beautiful sky, and then he painted a hawk in full flight with its wings spread out and its mouth open. And when he finished, at the end of the day, he was pleased with his work. And Mikhail said, "Oh, that's going to take his breath away." So the next morning, they got up, and Mikhail said, "Let me carry it for you." And so the master painter said, "Okay, let's cover it, and you carry it, but you must promise not to say anything to the Czar. I don't want you to spoil it." "I promise," said Mikhail. And so they walked to the palace, told the guard that they had this painting to give to the Czar, and requested that an easel be put up in the Czar's chamber so that they could mount the picture on the easel for viewing. They waited all day long. And finally, they were let in, and they went to the Czar's chambers and walked in, and Mikhail saw the easel, and he put the painting on, still covered, and stood by it. And the master painter knelt in front of the Czar and said, "Your Majesty, I have painted the best painting of my life. I hope it pleases you." And the Czar said, "I'll bet you do." And then he said, "Please unveil the painting." And so Mikhail took the cover off the painting. And the Czar went, "Huh!" He did gasp. It did take his breath away. And Mikhail smiled, and the master painter smiled, because they knew they had succeeded in the task of taking the Czar's breath away. But then their smiles faded, because the Czar began to frown. And he said, "This painting bores me. Guards, take the painter to the dungeons. He will have his head chopped off tomorrow morning." "No!" said Mikhail. "You can't do that. You promised that you would pay him handsomely if he took your breath away, and we all saw it took your breath away to view that painting." Well, the Czar at first was stunned at this outburst, and they said, "Who is this young, rude, insolent young man who dares tell me, the Czar, what I can and cannot do?" And then the master painter said, "Your Majesty, please forgive him. That's Mikhail, my apprentice, and he is young and he doesn't think before he speaks. Please forgive him." "Oh," said the Czar, "so he is your apprentice, is he? Well, I wonder how good at painting he is. I wonder if you have taught him to paint better than you have taught him manners." "Young Mikhail, you've had a little bit of time to think now. Do you have anything else to say to me?" And Mikhail said, he was just seething with anger, and he said, You "You are the most evil man I have ever seen before. You must be the son of the devil." "Oh," said the Czar, "I see that stopping to think does not help your manners at all." "Well, young apprentice, I have a task for you. I want you to do a portrait of my father, as you see him. And if your painting pleases me, I will release your friend and mentor, and you both can go home. But if my painting does not please me, then I will chop both of your heads off. You have 6 weeks to complete this painting, but I suggest you do it sooner than that because I'm not sure this old man can survive in my dungeon." So Mikhail was still seething with anger, and the Tsar said, "Take this guy out of here." And so the guards escorted him out, and Mikhail was walking home, and he was still seething with anger, and he thought, how in the world can I please this Tsar? That was the most beautiful painting I have ever seen, and he rejected it. How can I do this? And then he thought, wait, the Tsar is an evil man. He can't appreciate beauty. Maybe if I can do an evil-looking painting, he will appreciate it. But how can I do that? I've never painted anything evil-looking before. I need a subject. I know. I'll go down to the wharf because some pretty shady characters live down there, and I need to find someone with an evil-looking face I can use as a subject. So Mikhail went down to the wharf, and he looked, and he saw this man approach him. He had a scar on his face, and he had a scowl on his face. But as he got closer, he saw that there was just in the corner of his eye, a little twinkle of humanity and kindness, and it ruined the whole effect. So then he walked on, and then he saw a man. Oh, those eyes, they looked so evil. And he appeared to have a scowl too, but at the corner of the mouth, there was just a little bit of a turn-up of a smile, and it ruined the whole effect. So he gave up. He went home, back to the art studio, and he could not sleep. He didn't know what to do. He racked his brain. He just didn't know what to do. Well, as the sun came up, there was a knock at the door. And he went to the answer of the door. And there, standing, was a tall, handsome, kind of handsome-looking, well-dressed man. And the man said, "I heard that you need a subject for a painting, and I have come to offer myself." The man's laugh kind of sent chills down Mikhail's spine. And he said, "Well, yes, I guess so." And when he looked at this man's face, there was something about it that was really disturbing. I mean, he was handsome, but ooh, those eyes. And there was something evil about this man. And so he invited him in and had him sit down, and he started painting. And he really thought he kind of got the essence of the evil in this man's face. And at the end of the day, he was pretty much finished. And the man finally spoke and said, "Can I see what you've done?" And Mikhail said, "Sure." So the man got up and walked around and said, "Ooh, nice job, nice job. However, you didn't quite get the eyes right." And he took a paintbrush and he did a little touch-up on the eyes, and indeed, he made them look more evil. And Mikhail said, "Oh, I didn't know you were an artist." No one's ever called me an artist before, although I am kind of artistic in dealing with human souls. And a chill went down Mikhail's spine. And then the man said, "I have a deal for you. I know what your task is. I know that your friend and mentor is in the dungeon at the Tsar's palace. And I know you've been commissioned to do a painting. Let me take this painting home, and I will fix it up so it will bring about the desired effect, and your friend and mentor will be free to go. But it does involve the price of a human soul. Are you willing to agree to this? Michael was kind of shaking, but he didn't know what to do. He thought he had an impossible task, and at this point he felt he was dealing with the devil. And should he trust the devil to actually free his friend? And would that mean he would lose his soul? He would do anything to help his friend and mentor. So he said, yes, I agree. You can take the painting. So the man left. And Michael finally was able to sleep. But before he went to sleep, he dropped to his knees and he asked forgiveness from God for making a deal with the devil. And then he sort of passed out and slept on all night long. Well, he was awakened by a knock at the door. And there was the man, and he was holding a painting, and it wasn't just the painting, it had a frame, and it was covered. He couldn't see the painting, but he could see the bottom of the frame that was sticking out at the bottom, and it was the most beautiful, ornate gold he had ever seen. And so the man said, I see you noticed the gold frame. Pretty good, huh? And Michael said, yes. And the man said, well, you know, where I live, I told this goldsmith who's really, really good at dealing with gold, I told him if he would make this frame for me, I would give him 60 seconds of a cool breeze. And he jumped at the chance of doing that. And then he said, listen carefully, Michael. If this is going to work, you have to follow my directions to the letter. So what you're going to do, first of all, do not uncover this painting. Do not look at this painting. What you're going to do is you're going to take it to the palace. You're going to tell the guard that you've brought the painting that the Czar commissioned you to paint. And tell him to have an easel to display it, and tell him to bring your friend and mentor, the master painter, up from the dungeon to be in the Tsar's chambers to see the unveiling of this painting. The Tsar will agree to that because he will think it funny for the master painter to watch you fail, and so he'll do that. And then what you're going to do when you get there is you're going to put the painting on the easel, and then you're going to turn and you're going to walk over to your friend, take his hand, and start walking away. Now, the Czar is going to yell at you and say, stop, what are you doing? And then you're going to turn and you're going to tell the Czar, Your Majesty, I have painted the painting that you requested. It was the greatest painting I've ever done. It is so good that only you are worthy of unveiling it. And then you're going to turn and continue walking, and the Czar is going to sputter and stammer and tell you to stop, and they said, oh, well, and he'll jump off the throne and he'll unveil it. And you're to tell your friend and mentor not to turn around and look, that you both need to just walk out of that room and don't react to what's going to happen. And if you follow my directions exactly, you'll both be safe. Do you think you can do that? Yes, yes, said Michael. So the man left. Michael took the painting. When he got to the guard, he gave the guard the instructions to put up the easel and have his friend brought up to view the unveiling. It was the end of the day. It was starting to get dark when the guard came and got them. And he followed the directions exactly. He put the painting on the easel. He walked over to his friend, took his hand, and they started walking. The Czar said, stop, what are you doing? Unveil the painting. And then he turned around and he said, Your Majesty, only you are worthy of unveiling this painting. It must be seen with your eyes first. And then he turned and started walking, and the Czar was mad, but he jumped off the throne. He walked over, he pulled the cover off, and he let out the most blood-curdling scream anyone has ever heard. Michael and the master painter continued to walk out of the room. The guards were frozen. A couple of the Tsar's closest advisors, who were evil themselves, came out to see what was the matter. When they looked at the painting, they both dropped dead. Michael then explained the whole thing to his friend and mentor, how he had made a deal with the devil to save him. And they walked back, and as they walked back, that screaming was so loud, it went out of the palace into the city, and it continued all night long. Now, when Michael and the master painter got back to the art studio, they both dropped to their knees and asked forgiveness from God for Michael's making a deal with the devil, and thank God for having the painter released from the dungeon. And then they went to bed. Well, the screaming continued all night until the sun came up. And as the first rays of the sun came up, the screaming stopped. The soldiers that were in there became unfrozen, and the Czar was dead. And the general of the army, who never really liked the Czar anyway, sent for the Tsar's brother in Siberia to come to St. Petersburg to take over the rule of Russia. And the people in the city rejoiced because nobody liked that Tsar. When the news spread that he had died, they were all happy. Well, there was a knock at the door of the art studio, and Michael and the master painter went to answer, and there was the man. And in one hand, he had the rolled up painting. In the other hand, he had the golden frame. He had taken the painting out of the frame. And he said, I think I would like to give this frame to you because it's much too beautiful. It doesn't really go with the rest of the decor where I live. Would you like to have it? And they said, sure. And then he said, would you like to see the painting? It's safe to look at it now. And they said, yes. And so he unfurled it. And the painting was the Czar sitting on his throne with flames coming up. And you could tell that the Czar was screaming. His mouth was open, his face was contorted. And then he rolled it back up and he said, I keep this. And then Michael said, so do I have to fulfill my part of the bargain and go with you now? Silly apprentice. You have a kind and gentle soul. You do not belong where I live. I got what I wanted. I wanted the soul of the Czar. And so he left, and Michael and the master painter both dropped to their knees and thanked God for their good fortune. A portrait for the Czar. Wow.